been great.
Oh, you guys know this. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for this year's Real Talk program. The Real Talk started in 2019 with the Organizational Leadership program's first graduating class, and we're excited to be offering our third rendition of this wonderful event. The students taking the OLS seminar class this year are told that they need to think about what is the most compelling message that they feel their peers need to know in order to be successful. Thinking about it in terms of life, thinking about it in terms of leadership, and the things that they have learned throughout the curriculum. What we know about our curriculum is that we spend a lot of time talking about transitions, how we transition through different pieces of our life, and how we get ready to transition into some of the more overwhelming yet satisfying things that will come once we leave after graduation. So tonight we have 5 amazing students who are here to tell you their stories, and I want to thank you for being part of this experience very much. First, we have Dharma Hopkins.
Hello. Minor technical difficulties, sorry. Hello. All right. Hi, my name is Dharma Hopkins, and I'm an organizational leadership major, and my topic is reframing. However, before we get into that, I do hope you all have the papers, or at least as many of you, because I feel like there's more than 25 of you, for an activity that I'd like you all to help me out with. And so if you'll just take the next 2 minutes and fill out the page that you have, and if you don't, you can just think through it on here. So how this is going to work for your paper is you're going to fill out each one, and for A, B, C, and D, you're going to rank it 4, 3, 2, 1 for which one you feel most applies to you, and then least applies to you. 4 being most, 1 being least. And if you have any questions about any of them, feel free to ask your partner, or if y'all don't know, before the timer runs down, I'm happy to help. All right, if you guys can try to finish up in the next 10 seconds, but also if you need to keep working throughout, that's totally cool. All right, and so now hopping into reframing, the first thing that we need to go over is what is a frame. And so a frame is really kind of something that you can think of as a lens, because it's what you look through and how it helps you see the world and yourself and the situations that you come across. And so I chose this topic because for me, lenses remind me of thought processes, and it kind of reminded me of like neurodivergency a little bit, in the sense that all of our brains work differently, even if there are common themes. And it doesn't mean that one is better than another, it just means that it's a different way. And so another way to be able to think about how we interact with frames and situations and problems is whatever our frame is that we're most comfortable with. Whenever we come across a problem, it's similar to like coming across a hurdle. You know the step to get over it, you're supposed to jump it. Meanwhile, if you come across something where your frame doesn't necessarily work, you get stuck, you really don't know where you're supposed to go next. I would equate that more with coming across a boulder in a path where you're not entirely sure how you're supposed to jump over that. It could be double your size, it could be too wide where you don't see the sides and you don't really know how to go around it. And so that is a situation where being aware of the other frames could help you turn that boulder into a hurdle and help you get further on your path. The first frame is the structural frame. And so in terms of leadership, a structural leader is more like an architect. Their process is design and analysis. While an ineffective leader could be comparable to a tyrant, and their leadership process is like micromanaging. I feel like we've all had a manager or someone in charge of us who definitely controls like every detail. You have to do it the way that they planned it, even if you found a way that works better for you. And so people who have the structural base, it's really their more like rational process to achieve their goals and very step-by-step task-oriented. For the human resource, thinking about it in the leadership perspective again, an effective human resource leader would be like a catalyst. Their leadership process is about growth and empowerment, while an ineffective leader would be more like a pushover. Their leadership style is very hands-off to the point where they're not giving any proper guidance because it's really trying to get you to do the work even in an effort to get you to grow, but not being helpful in that way. And so for the human resource frame, their primary way of communication and their way of thinking is people's growth and opportunity because they're very people-focused. The political frame, whenever it comes to the leader, would be more like a negotiator, and their thought process would be like coalition building. And the ineffective leader would be a manipulator, essentially, and their thought process is that very like con artist using that skill and knowledge of connections to go after what they want specifically rather than helping those around them. And so for the political frame and in itself, you see the conflict awareness and like goals and agendas. It's being able to walk into a room and know that there are mostly like finite resources that everyone wants part of, and knowing that that doesn't make people bad for wanting to be able to take care of themselves, but being able to know how to get everyone what they need just to move forward rather than necessarily trying to hoard that wealth and hoard that knowledge. It's about knowing motivations and knowing how to help people move forward through it. The symbolic frame for the effective leader would be like a poet, and because their process is meaning making. While on the flip side, the ineffective leader would be a charlatan and someone who uses smoke and mirrors. The symbolic frame is all about inspiration, and with the meaning making, they look for the purpose, they look for the why, rather than the necessarily steps that you find in the structural frame. Now, going back to the activity that you had done, how you get your results through there is you separately add up all of your A's, and that will go in the ST portion, all of your B's, all of your C's, all of your D's. And your total down at the bottom should be 60, so that's just there to make sure you got all your math right and all of your numbers. And so whenever you add it up, whether it'll show you what your strongest frame is, whether it's structural, human resource, political, or symbolic, or you might find that there's actually a fair medium between them all. And so that just means that you're already naturally more adept at swapping between the frames rather than heavily relying on one. And also on the back of your sheet, it does include like a little kind of synopsis of the 4 frames, because I'm hoping that you'll be able to like take these with you. And if it's something that interests you, you can further look it up. And if not, there's just something that'll go more in depth than I have. We have about 15 seconds left. All right, and now that we've already discussed the frames individually, on to reframing in and of itself. So reframing is something that you can think of if you think back in lines of the thought processes, is trying to work past this idea of functional fixedness and working more using like productive thinking, which is reframing a problem in a new way. And in this way, the functional fixedness, the function would be your thought process itself, because we all just have our natural things that we fall back on, and we're just how we intake information and then how we move through it. And so with reframing, it's acknowledging the bias that you naturally have for your frame, and then being able to acknowledge that there are other ways. And this will help you, A, get past your own problems, but also help you in terms of communication. And so some examples that we can work through here is like a school project. I'm pretty sure we've all had a fair few of those. So say that you are having difficulty in getting your project to move forward. And so if you are someone who's of the structural frame, your first assumption is going to be, we're not moving forward because we didn't like clarify roles well enough. Someone doesn't know what they're supposed to be doing. If you're in the human resource frame, your first assumption is probably going to be, what's the motivation level? Someone's not feeling good, someone's not connecting well, and trying to figure out like what's going on with them on the personal level that's impacting them in this school project. Meanwhile, if it's the political frame, you're probably more inclined to believe that that school project isn't their first priority. Maybe they have a paper due in 2 hours, and so they'll work on the project after that, and until then you won't see anything done. Meanwhile, if you're the symbolic frame, you're probably going to make the assumption that there's just a miscommunication or an unclearness in what the purpose is and what the goal of your assignment is. Meanwhile, also for something a little deeper than a school project sometimes is social justice discussions, and how we can all get heated even if it isn't like a red button issue, just because we don't understand how someone could come to the conclusion that they're coming to or have the priorities that they have, even if it's not necessarily a big deal. And so you just realize that like, I think we should do this because A, and someone's like, well, I don't think that's important because B, and you're just like that. Even if it's not a high-level thing, it just gets so frustrating because you're like, why would you prioritize that? But so then whenever you realize that like not everyone thinks the same way you do, it can be a very beneficial thing to move forward. And so for me, that was something that I found very important and empowering to know for reframing. And it was, I think, my biggest takeaway from my leadership classes is because like we're all very first person point of view because our only point of view is our own, but being aware that like everyone else has their own first person point of view and everyone's brains don't think the same way. And that's why we have different priorities and different ways to think of things. And so I hope that through this activity, you were able to find out more about yourself, and maybe you can share that with friends and find out that like they have different ones than you, and you can talk about that. And I think that would just be great. Thank you. Here are my references. Hello. My name is Sydney Elliott, and today I will be talking to you about conflict. Now, how many of us in this room
have ever looked at someone and just thought to ourselves, man, what I wouldn't give to just kick you in the shin right now? I know I have. Yeah. Now, how many of us in this room have been in conflict? Just raise your hand, right? Now, how many of us feel like we're scared of conflict or that we would rather avoid it altogether, right? So when we think of conflict, we may think it looks something like this, right? We think that conflict might immediately lead to any sort of social rejection. Because we're humans, we are social creatures. We crave the social acceptance. We don't want to be a part of an out-group. We want to be a part of in-group. So we avoid conflict. Avoiding conflict doesn't really do anything. No matter where you go, you will always find conflict there with you. Conflict is unavoidable. Instead of running from conflict, embrace it and learn from it in order to build up your conflict management skills that you can use both in your personal life and your professional life as well. Conflict is ingrained in us. It has always been ingrained in us. So, originally, the Neanderthals were here. Historians believed that the Neanderthals were wiped out because of climate change. Well, there's a new theory that suggests that Neanderthals were actually wiped out from the original humans. As long as there have been humans, there has been conflict. Just because conflict has the potential to become uncomfortable doesn't mean it always ends up there. Conflict can be educational and character building if we allow it to be. Pictured here is the amygdala, which is central in controlling how we express our emotions. So biologists claim that the amygdala has a natural tendency to lean more toward an aggression or fear response. Sociologists claim that this isn't true, right? They believe that humans have the ability to work through their knee-jerk reactions in order to choose a different path. They also argue that these behaviors are learned. They're not ingrained in us already. This means that we can unlearn them and replace them with things that are beneficial and efficient in conflict resolution. So, there are several different methods that you can use for conflict resolution. So, there's compromise, there's collaboration, there's accommodation, and there's mediation. For the purpose of this speech, I will be focusing on compromise and collaboration in order to reach conflict management. That's a little bit off there, don't know why, but promise it looks better on the screen. So, we make compromises every single day of our lives, right? For example, this morning, I got up and I wanted to brush my teeth before I got ready for the morning. Well, my roommate beat me to the bathroom. That's fine. I got dressed before and then I brushed my teeth after. We have these small social interactions a lot throughout our week, but we might not always realize that these are compromises. Fact of the matter is that we have a lot of experience with compromising already, and when we compromise in a conflict, this allows the other side to feel like they're valued over simply the other side simply being right. They want to have a relationship with you, and you are giving them an opportunity to have the relationship with you if you compromise together and work towards a better future for both of you. Second, we have collaboration. So when we collaborate, we see this in international relations, things go very good for us, right? We're able to come together, have technology advancements and social advancements, and overall have a better future. When we don't collaborate, things can get very, very bad, which is what we've seen recently in a lot of different countries. When we collaborate in a conflict, this lets both sides feel like their thoughts and opinions are validated and heard. This also allows us to have both sides coming together and supporting this change for the future. You're more likely to follow it if you're more likely to support it. So, each situation requires a different approach. The people that are in the situation or the environment that it's in may affect the outcome. However, with these two things, you can mediate a lot of conflicts. No matter what style you choose, there are specific tips and tricks to keep in mind when dealing with conflict. So first, we have listening. So listen to what the other side is saying. It's very tempting to want to go into a conflict and spill everything out on the table and just say, this is what I've been thinking, this is what I've been feeling, it's all here. Well, when you do that, that does not let the other side have time to process what you're saying and have time to come up with their own responses. By going one at a time and slowly, this allows both of you to be able to really understand what the root of the issue is. Next, know what your triggers are. So in mainstream society, triggers are seen as very emotionally overwhelming. In leadership, we view triggers like a little bit less than that. So it's something that engages your bias. It's something that throws you a little bit off. But know what your triggers are. If you know what your triggers are in an argument, you can prevent them from coming up and have you lashing out at someone who may not even know that they're triggering you. When you are being triggered, it's very useful to be able to focus on your 5 senses so that you're grounded and coming back down to the argument at hand. These 5 senses are sight, touch, taste, smell, and hearing. By doing this, you're able to focus back on the situation and really get to what the root of the problem is and how to solve it. Next, see collaboration, not punishment. It's very tempting to want to play the blame game and feel like the conflict is entirely one-sided, right? It's one person's fault. Well, if we reflect, we've probably engaged with this conflict and added to it at some point as well. When we seek collaboration, this allows both sides to come together and join as a team to solve the problem that you're both facing. Fourth, be specific. So say that you have a suite mate and they come to you and they're like, I just can't deal with these dishes anymore. I can't deal with them. I've had enough. Well, what is it about these dishes that are specifically bothering you? Is it that there's too many dishes in the sink? Is it that they're in the drying rack too long? Is it that someone's using your dishes without asking? What is it that is bothering you? If you're not specific, then the other person won't know what about their behavior needs to be changed and amended for you to be more comfortable around them. They'll just be anxious because they don't know what's going to set you off, right? Finally, use humor. Everybody likes to have a little bit of a chuckle from time to time, and when it's appropriate, it can be very useful in conflict management so that it doesn't feel like it's some life-altering, relationship-ending argument that you're having. Instead, it's a problem that you're coming together with a peer that you respect to solve. So, finally, I will leave you with a little bit of a personal story. When I was a freshman at Cottey, we had a suite chair that was a little bit overbearing. Thought that she had a lot of authority over everybody in the suite and touched my face a lot, which I did not like at all. Well, we did not, nip it in the bud. We let resentments rise and tensions build, and we got into an argument about halfway through that first semester my freshman year. None of us bothered to resolve it. Instead, we all lived in misery for the rest of the year, and we hated each other. So, when you let tensions build up, the conflict becomes unmanageable. All the skills that you have fly out the window, and we revert to the aggression response. By stepping in early, especially with a conflict that repeats itself, we can nip the problem in the bud and have our wits about us as we work to improve our future together. Now, thank you. I forgot everything that I was supposed to say.
Good evening, everybody. How many of you expected the placement change? Show of hands. Okay, thank you. Oh, you did not expect it. Yes, that was what I was supposed to ask. So how many of you were comfortable with the change? So I moved everybody, you saw everybody come in that way. So how many of you were comfortable? Okay, thank you. So today I'm going to be talking about change in times of crisis. So what you just experienced is a very short amount of change. It was a twist of your neck, and then you were able to spot me very easily. But imagine when it's bigger changes. Imagine when you can't anticipate it coming your way, when it's not communicated even. How do you facilitate that in times of crisis? COVID, coming to college, and many more. So I'm going to introduce you the 20, 50, 30% rule by Ralph. He's an astounding change agent, an American change agent who's done many research in communicating that and being an advocate for it. In that, he states that 20% of the people or population are an advocate for change. They instigate it, they advocate for it, they're the sounding board for those changes to come. The 50%, which is me, we're like, I'll see and wait where this takes me. Like, I'll figure it out on the process. We don't really rush into decisions because we want to see where the road takes us. And the other 30% of the population, they are resisting it. They don't want to hear it, they don't want to entertain it, or they don't want to give it time. So, I want to take you back to my first year in Cottey. That is my mom crying when she said bye to me. I never expected once in my life to come to America. My mom and dad, they used to take me around of Ethiopia and show me different colleges I could possibly go into. I loved it, I had my life set, and I love my culture. I did not want to part away from it. But I got my visa, I got my acceptance letter, but even with that process, it's still guaranteed that I was coming. This is becoming a reality, but I still didn't want to hear it. So I took my first picture in Georgia, that was in the airport, and I sent it to my mom, and I still could not believe it. I was expecting somebody to deport me and was just ready for it, because you never know. But that did not happen. I was lucky. I stayed 4-0 now. But this is very minor situation. This is one person's story. Think about bigger changes. They don't all go through. That is why Bev Archie, an astounding American change communication agent, she is a professional in communicating how to go through changes. She stated that 60 to 70% of changes that happen, they don't really go through. They fail. Surprising, right? So, we all know Rosa Parks. She's an African-American woman. She refused to get off that bus, which started the civil rights movement. It was amazing, right? But when you think about it, do you think she was the only person? How many of you here know Claudette Colvin? How many of you know Polly Murray? For your hands. Claudette Colvin was a 15-year-old girl who did the same thing 9 months before Rosa Parks. She did the same thing in segregated Montgomery, Alabama, refused to get off her bus, and she was incarcerated for it. 15 years before that, Polly Murray, an advocate for civil rights movement, gender fluidity, this was when we're talking about 1945, around World War II. She was a huge advocate for it. When she and her friend got into the bus and they were told to sit in the back, they said no, and they ended up in prison. These people, they failed in those times. Rosa Parks succeeded, but it's not a failure. When you think about it, they implanted seeds that will bloom in the future. Maybe they did not see you through, they were not present for it, but they implanted seeds. But there is many more changes that happen in our daily life that just don't. That is why I'll introduce you to Kurt Lewin. He is a German-American psychologist. He's renowned. He has so many books and peer reviews, literatures published as well. He introduces the unfreeze, change, and refreeze model. In the unfreeze model, this is where we ask questions. What do we want to change? Where do we want to go? What is our values right now? What's the point of the change? Is it even necessary? That is what we asked during the unfreeze process. So high school, we had 12 years of routine. We all know we had to wake up for school, grab our bags, go to school, have a day, maybe do some activities, and then come back. That was 12 years of our life or more even. But when we start thinking about coming to college, it started getting a little uncomfortable, right? We didn't want to think about it because we didn't want to make those big decisions that altered our life for the better. Because in those 12 years, we had stability. We had avoided fear that would make drastic changes in our life. We were comfortable where we were sitting. When we talk about the unfreeze process, we're talking about emotions. We're talking about people that is experiencing loss. When we talk about loss, we talk about grieving because people grieve when they experience loss. When you lose somebody you love, when you lose your favorite job and you have to move to live to a different city. When I came here, I missed my Ethiopian food. I talk about it every time. But we experienced that loss. And I remember when I was my first year, I was so excited to be here. Still doubtful, but very excited. And COVID-19 happened. Early January, when we were hearing about it in China and the news, I was like, no, that's not my issue right now. Like, I don't have to worry about it. I was in denial because this can't be real. This is just a flu. It will go by. We don't have to worry about it. But then everything hit the fan, and we had to deal with it front on. That was when I was so angry. I was so angry that my first year in college is ruined. This is the time I wanted to travel, go abroad and see different things, you know, experience people, meet new cultures, and like interact with people in general. I did not expect to stay in my room for the rest of the 5 months and just be stuck there. But then I started to bargain. I will wear my mask. I'll, get the vaccines. I'll do what I have to do. And, everything will be back to normal. That was not it. We came back. All of us had to wear masks. That was not, what we went through. But I also was sad. I did not have my families. My mom and dad would call me. It was my sisters at home, and they would talk about how they had an amazing day because they didn't go to school. And I was here alone with other relatives, which is not the same. So finally, when August hit, we came back. I accepted the fact that, this is our new normal. We all coped with it. We had the no mask policies. We had to deal with those changes. And when people were experiencing, why would I wear a mask? They were experiencing that loss. They were experiencing that 5 stages of grief that we did not really think about when COVID hit. So, Managing Transitions book by William Bridge talks about 3 things that really stood out to me. The first is identifying who is losing what. When we're going through changes, we need to pinpoint, if I'm changing from this desk to another desk, what am I losing? What is that? What do I have a connection to that desk specifically? It may be small. It's just changing your offices or changing, like your dorms even. It is small, but we need to identify who is at loss, who is losing what. The second thing is we need to accept the reality and importance of subjective losses. Just because you are facilitating it and you're not feeling that huge impact and you believe in the values and the emotions that comes with that change, doesn't mean that people are not going through a different brain thought process. We need to accept it. We don't need to condemn them or invalidate their feelings because it is not ours to do so. It's not our place to say so. The only thing we can give is empathy. Lastly, give people information for you, those of you who are changing your lives every day. If you're going from like Kansas City to Missouri, your mom is going to be worried. So call her and tell her, like, I am going here, and like just let her know. Give people information because information is power. It is stability. It is that thing that makes people grounded. Just give it again and again. Lack of information is what frustrates people and makes them feel uncertain of where they're going. It's not, there's no such thing as too much information. Okay, maybe sometimes. So we go back to the actual change. That is the second stage, and within that, that is where the action happens. There's a lot of logistics that comes with it. So that is why it has 4 parts. The first one is strategic change. It is big picture. It is the values that we want to see if we're changing, for example, our traditions on campus. Why do we do that? So what is the big plan? Where do we want to go? And where are we headed with it? So there is also the process changes. So for example, let's say Shelly buys a new equipment. That means it will cut down our wait time. Woohoo, right? That is process change. It will make the processes better. We will see better results. There are structural changes. Those are daily goals we want to achieve. I wanted to go to the gym every day for the last 5 days. Did not happen, but that was a goal. That was a structural goal. And there is people change. We forget that we're not dealing with robots. Maybe in some cases, but for most cases, we are dealing with people. People have emotions. They feel, they go through whatever they go through. Plus, they have daily lives that everybody's experiencing. So we need to be mindful of that as well. So the last stage is the freeze. This is the most as important as the first stage because this is where we are creating new habits. We're staying stagnant. We're creating a culture. We're normalizing our new normal. And This is where we want to really think about what is the measurables. We need to evaluate the process. If this is going to be our next 5 years, if our next 5 years is going to be looking like this, we need to think about it. When I came to America, I knew my next 4 years or 5 years is going to be here. So I needed to figure out what is the logistics of it. I needed to think about, if I'm going to stay here, what is my finances? One is, how am I going to communicate with my family? What is the resources that I would need to continue with this? So we need to really take this critically. So I wanted to conclude with 3 big takeaways. The first thing is listen. Listen, listen, listen. Not listen to respond, but listen to understand what is happening. Our expectations usually is that when we talk, people listen and they put it into action, but that is not reality. We listen to respond. I always wanted to be the first person to raise my hand and answer the questions in class, not really internalizing what is happening currently. Recognize. We need to recognize what is happening. As I mentioned, we are dealing with people and robots. We're dealing with people, not robots. So we need to pay attention and recognize, what do they need? How can I make the process better for you? How can I make your transition, that change you're going through, better for you? We need to ask those questions. Lastly, knowledge is not enough. We stay here for 4 years of our life to only come out and just be any other regular citizen. What's the point? We just lost so much money that we could have just used for our, life. Next step. We need to use those knowledge or any information we gather and put it to the action. It may be just a step you're taking today, but that step will get you there when you need to. So we need to act on it. Just act whatever you got it, just cautiously, critically as well. So these are my references. But before that, I want to leave you with, change is not a destination, and it's not a stable matter. It is a journey. So embrace the path. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bronwyn Reagan. I hope everyone is doing well tonight. So, in preparation for today's topic, I'm doing networking. In this preparation, I decided to conduct a couple of interviews. One of the interviews that I did was with a friend and colleague of mine. He, in all the years that we worked, he's been also a mentor. So in this, I sent him questions, and he went ahead and responded accordingly. But he also decided to send his questions to some of his colleagues, which was lovely. So not only did I get his responses, I also got the responses of his colleagues. One of the colleagues happened to be a PEO. It's like, oh, lovely. So she contacted me, and we had a lovely discussion, talking about Cottey life and what I've been doing here as a result of studying with this. But wait, there's more. Dr. Adams emailed me earlier that day saying that a mysterious woman, he didn't phrase it like that, but a mysterious woman was wanting to meet with me. It's like, interesting. Okay, so who is this person? Jumping back to the earlier conversation with the woman that I mentioned earlier, she happens to know the international PEO woman, international president for PEOs, and she kept mentioning her in the interview. So the following day, when I finally met up with this person that Dr. Adams was requesting me to meet with, it turned out that it was this woman, the international president for PEO. Now, you might be thinking, so what does this have to do with networking? Well, it turns out that networking often looks like this. It's not this highly structured, formalized way of, well, I must know this person and then I will know this person. It's often messy. The trick is being able to recognize it and to realize that this is a networking opportunity. So, for starters, let's define what is networking. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, it is the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. I don't know about you, but this isn't the most helpful. It still makes networking seem like a behemoth of a thing. So let's break it down a little bit further. There are 3 types of networking. There's operational. So these are the people that you're going to work with. They're often good at what they do, but much of your interaction is related to task-oriented activities. The next one is personal. So when it comes to personal networks, this can be friends, family, clubs, or even small organizations. The nice thing about having friends, family, and being part of a club is that they often know other people outside of your immediate circle. The last one is strategic. Generally, you're going to have colleagues within this form of networking. Colleagues are a little bit different from coworkers in the sense that they tend to have interests that cover the wide span of a particular field of interest, whereas coworkers, again, are more related to task-oriented activities. The other thing is strategic networks often include mentors. So these people are going to know your strengths, your specific strengths, and are going to be willing to take a risk on you because they feel as though you have something greater to offer to society as a whole. So now that we got that out of the way, there are a couple of ways in which to broaden your network. One of them being social media. Wonderful. So a lot of people will use Facebook or Twitter, which is a great way of getting your network as broad as possible. With that, it can be used for personal or professional. But if you're looking to do more professional networking, I recommend doing something like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is, for those of you who don't know, it is a service company that allows you to upload your resume, and then potential employers can look you up and then have an exchange that way. The only downside to having your network online is that you don't have that relational or personal aspect to it. The thing about social media and online platforms is that it's not an adequate substitution for one-on-one interactions. So how do you get from the point of how do you develop that one-on-one interaction with people that within a particular field of interest? For one, go to conferences or attend a lecture. Be willing to talk with anyone. It's a little scary at first, but you might be surprised in what you learn. The other thing is go beyond just attending something. Journal about your experience. When you journal, you're not only recalling the events, you're also remembering specific details about people. People really like it when you remember them. And in this instance, you're again seeking to build a relationship with others. So there are a couple of myths about networking. Only successful people count. So when I was younger, my grandmother painstakingly, very patient, had taught me how to sew. Never in my wildest dreams would I think sewing would help me in my professional goals. Turns out, when you're involved in theater and someone has a ripped dress or a prop needs you need to sew something for a specific prop, it ends up being a really useful skill. The thing though is my grandmother wasn't a top designer. She's just my grandmother. The thing is you never know what one interaction with one person will lead to. In her efforts to share with me her skills and talents, she allowed me to obtain new skills and to help others. The next thing is you have to be an extrovert in order to be a good networker. This isn't always the case. Sometimes being an introvert can be to your advantage as well. The thing is that the key point is that it's attention to details. Recently, I was approached by someone within the Nevada community regarding a project related to Cottey students. I was very interested in the project, but I didn't have time or resources to actually do anything. However, I did refer to someone else who was equally interested, but had better resources. The point was, it didn't matter whether I was an extrovert or an introvert. I listened. I listened to the person and acted according to their needs. Oftentimes, that's what you have to do when it comes to networking. You just need to listen. And again, that's one of the fundamental elements of building a relationship. The next one is, the bigger your network, the better it is. I know it's kind of cliche, but it's still true. Quality over quantity is still very much a thing. If you want to make a change, you're going to have to engage other people in the process, and they're going to have to learn how to trust you. And this goes in line with community building. Lastly, networks are only meant for personal gains. Let me tell you, issues arise when you try to always put your needs before others. The moment you close yourself off to other people is the moment you cut yourself off from a potential networking point. Remember that every person you meet is simply an unexplored networking point. With that, by being willing to put yourself out there and to help others, you're essentially, again, you're building a relationship, but you never know who that person might be. That person might be your next boss, or they might get you into contact with someone who can help you in your career goals. So what exactly is the secret to networking? How do you get there? So one of the things is you have to learn how to be flexible. A lot of people end up aiming toward one career path, and then all of a sudden they change their mind. I'm sure some of you who are here today have had one goal in mind in terms of your degree, your major, but then you eventually changed. It's okay to change your mind. Oftentimes the alternative is better in the long run. The next one is be kind to others, even if you don't really like them. There's no reason to burn unnecessary bridges. If you're smart, you'll try to understand why a person thinks the way that they do, which may eventually lead you into becoming an empathetic person. If you're really smart, you'll learn to differentiate the difference between those who are struggling in life and those who are truly malevolent in character. This helps you develop judgment or a skill to be judicious and to be somewhat discerning when you're evaluating long-term relationships. The last one is, not the last one, there's another one before. Know what your values are and where you want to put your energy. The fact is some people will never change, which, okay, fair enough, but you don't need to be rude about it, but don't try to force it. Instead, know your values, but with that comes deep self-reflection. Knowing your values, often I hear people complain, it's like, oh, I hate this job. And most of the time it's because their values don't align with that other person or that organization. So next time I encourage you, if you're going into a new relationship or even potentially going into another organization, create a list of your values. Then you go in with set expectations. Now, your values don't have to align perfectly with the other person or the organization, just close enough so that you're not constantly having that internal battle with that other person or organization. Lastly, pay forward your blessings. You can't build trust by being selfish or controlling. People tend not to like that. But what you can do is really simple. For example, it can be as simple as Harry meets Sally. She is working on X project for Y company. I believe that you two have some mutual interests. In this instance, you're essentially becoming a networking hub where people come to you because you happen to know other people and you're willing to share that experience with others. In helping others expand that network, you're also expanding your network. So as I wrap up the speech, I won't know that with identifying networks, people can come from various backgrounds. And you can, come from various backgrounds. And you can mix and match various talents and create your own personal brand, as it were. Next is also know that networking tools are there to your disposal, but also remember to have that personal element to it. Be open, bold, kind, generous. Networking should not be seen as a selfish endeavor. It is truly the training ground for your leadership journey. Whether you realize it or not, a lot of what leadership is about facilitating interactions with others. It's identifying common goals amongst others, forming that sense of trust, and building a community. So next time, I encourage you, whenever you're curious about a particular topic, why not ask? You might learn something new. You might be pleasantly surprised. In a way, it's sort of extraordinary, yet fabulous all at the same time. All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Mamie Watt, and thank you for coming to our presentations tonight. Now, to get started, I'd like to inform you of my topic for the night, and that is Cottey Campus's traditions and the adaptive leadership that comes with it. To kind of give you an overview of what's going on, I'll be talking about the moving in, moving up, and moving forward of these last 4 years, having been a part of the executive board of traditions. So, moving in, you're a freshman or a first year, whichever. You're coming in with the expectation of opportunity, of potential, being able to meet new people and learn new things. You come in with hopes, and you come in and you move in physically, mentally, you're excited, and everything is in front of you. We're often told that we reach for the stars when we come here, when we come to college. And there's so many things that we reach for. We reach for academic success, for freedom from either our parents or from ourselves so we can start anew, for those clubs that we love to participate in, as well as traditions here on campus. And as you see, this ladder is very tall, and up in the way, way top is graduation. It seems so far away. You have all the time in the world. And that was me my freshman year. I came here with very little knowledge and or expectation of what campus life would be like, as I was not able to come see for myself. But when I came here, I was enamored with the idea of traditions on campus. I thought it would be a wonderful experience to get to know the people around me and really immerse myself in the culture here on campus. And one particular tradition, I remember myself just thinking, wow, these songs were made for us, and these songs are lasting decades and decades past their original writing. And being able to spend time with my seniors and sing these songs and mingle afterward and hear the ding, ding, ding of those jackets, man, it was like everything was fitting into place. And there was so much that we could have done, and so much excitement and so much, oh my goodness. And it was like nothing could ever go wrong. But it did. COVID went wrong. And with that, we did not get to finish our freshman year traditionally, or at all, as that is. So Thankfully, I was able to save up some of that excitement from my previous year, as I do have quite a bit of a reservoir for it. In my high school year, I was ranked the superlative of penguinicity, which is, as our school mascot was the penguin, best school spirit. So I tried to muster up whatever I could and apply it to my second year as I ran for CSC vice president. I was so excited. I wanted to be able to make everything work out for those around me and for myself. So, moving forward, not only was I vice president of traditions, I also kind of put myself in some other things. First, I was the treasurer of Board Game Club with some friends of mine, just kind of a side deal. Then, I was a member of Golden Key, giving tours to prospective students and to alumni and PEO donors. I was also a barista in the Shelley Club during, before, and after the transition into the Shelley Club, into the chapel basement, excuse me. And not only that, I also worked in the dining hall, as many of you have seen me serve your food and give you a smile and say goodbye as you go on about your day, as well as traditions. So lots of energy had to be put in this year, and my approach was very much situational. It was so important for me to develop these ideas and to implement them into the new CSC board, as we had just in the end of 2019, at the beginning of 2020, implemented a new CSC constitution where the third and fourth years were to be participating in traditions formally. So I think it was such a wild year. So many things happened: quarantine, masks, Zoom. Many of you may know, like, the struggles. Obviously, we've all went through it. And I wanted to be able to be supportive to my peers, to my friends, to my employers, and work through whatever struggles we went through, and be observational so I could best apply whatever I've seen, whatever I've learned to those around me. And time went by, then we had to start a new year. And you would think, considering, I went through traditions and some we weren't able to do because of COVID restrictions, it wasn't exactly the real restart. There were a couple kinks that we had to work through, as the seniors who previously participated in those traditions had graduated or were more focused on capstone as they were trying to transfer or leave campus. It was definitely a different start. And thankfully, we were able to do those traditions we were not able to participate in previously. And man, were they a hit! Oh my gosh. Personally, I really liked them. But I think a number of you all would be able to say that they were pretty enjoyable too, right? Yes? Okay, cool. And with this year, I thought it was very important to change perspectives. The previous two, it was very much, what can I do? I want to do everything. Please, let me do something. But this year, I'd seen the actions and the responsibilities that were due of me going into clubs and going into executive positions on campus. And so I implemented a path goal mindset where it's almost like an inchworm. You stop and you say, okay, this is where I want to go, and this is the path I take. And when you get to that goal, you implement a new path. It's like branching off, your little inchworm going along a branch. So it was very helpful to take this mindset, because as those freshmen that I tried to help with traditions my second year were now part of that executive board and giving all of the new ideas that they had thought of during the traditions we made for them my sophomore year. So with that, we were able to have a very successful year, and it was so wonderful. I would never be able to replace that in my mind. That was moving up. Thinking again, as I am as a fourth year student and the current CSC president on campus, I want to think of my legacy here. As I will be moving forward without very many of you here, it makes me sad, but also glad that I'll be able to leave so many wonderful memories here. I want freshmen and my underclassmen to think about what can they do to help guide their underclassmen? And what can they do to help their peers in traditions or as friends simply? Because these traditions were meant to join us and to be connecting experiences on campus. So if there's one thing I wanted all freshmen, either current or past, to take away, is this kind of memory. The sheer enjoyment that you could feel from traditions on campus. And if anything, I would hope that you all would be able to take that away as well, as you've seen the kind of like steps I've taken throughout these years, and help your friends or help your fellow students in traditions or through clubs or organizations on campus. You do you. So yeah, I really hope that you would all be able to experience these kind of memories with your friends. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you so much for being with us this evening. We have one last piece that we want to do. I want to ask all of my speakers to come out on this. They're working on getting the mic off. So come on back out. One of the things that I tell people when I talk about my job is the fact that I love my students, that I am one of the luckiest people on campus because of the people that I get to work with, for the most part. I'm just kidding. And I could not be happier or more proud of this group and the work that they have put in to this event and to their projects and their efforts so far. So as a token for each of them, we have a small gift. And we hope that you will join us outside. We have some light refreshments, and thank you all for being part of this evening. Thank you very much. Oh, wait. We do have one last thing. I forgot. I will ask, who's going to talk?
I don't really think I need that one.
Okay.
So while we are the organizational leadership majors now, we really won't be next year. And so we want to acknowledge the people who are going to come after us and show that this stage is kind of reserved for them. And so I believe we have two, Brooke and Steve. And sorry, Steve, you're the one I see.
And thus begins the OLS tradition. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening.